statue even made her dazed for a moment. It was extremely similar to that spirit du Luo named N.A.N. Except that on the forehead of N.A.N's statue, there was a golden eye mark carved, like a symbol. Is this Mobai's ancestor? N.A.N didn't think too much about it. The surroundings were so quiet, clearly waiting for someone. It couldn't be her, the only possibility was Mobai. Shifting her gaze slightly, she saw that the altar was surrounded by a large amount of blue-silver grass, and a hint of doubt arose in her heart. Blue-silver grass. But before she could finish her thought, she felt a gentle tug on her hand. N.A.N looked over. Mobai still wore a gentle smile, causing her heart to once again be filled with his presence. Her steps followed the gentle tug, as she walked onto the altar one step at a time. She didn't stop until they were in front of the stone statue. Mobai turned back to meet N.A.'s eyes, which were full of affection. Under everyone's gaze, Mobai took a step forward, the distance between them so small they could almost smell each other's breath. N.A.'s heart tightened and pounded, yet she bit her lip and did not retreat. Chapter 62. Is the world fake? Her eyes never left the young man's face, as if her mind and soul wanted to sink into this very moment. N.A. couldn't help but murmur softly, so beautiful. Nana, repeat after me. Mobai's gentle voice echoed in N.A.'s ear. N.A.'s face flushed red, and she gave a soft, in response. Prayers were generally recited by descendants, specifically direct descendants. Mobai's request for her to follow his lead was a declaration. He was accepting her in front of all his clansmen. How bold, how direct. She didn't dislike it at all. Mobai looked at N.A.'s face. It was time to test her quality. He spoke softly. The bright moon reflects reality. The bright moon reflects reality. N.A. followed Mobai word for word. Welcome the descent of my god. Welcome the descent of my god. N.A. paused slightly, but she had already subconsciously followed along, uttering the final word, descent, from her lips. After the two of them finished the sentence, the surrounding believers shouted toward the sky with extreme piety. The bright moon reflects reality. Welcome the descent of my god. Amidst the roar of the crowd, a flash of clarity crossed N.A.'s affection-filled eyes. She couldn't help but look up at a giant golden eye gradually converging upon the bright moon. With just one look, the four words, true god cult, surfaced in her mind. N.A.'s smile froze, and her pupils contracted rapidly. From the corner of her eye, she connected all the previous events, the blue-silver grass, the altar, the giant golden eye, the true god cult, Mobai. An unthinkable and terrifying thought surfaced in her mind. The smile of the youth before her became incredibly eerie in her eyes. No, it can't be, it definitely isn't. N.A.'s steps trembled slightly as she took a step back. She looked at Mobai with eyes full of disbelief and struggle, pleading, Mobai, I beg you. Tell me, this isn't real. This isn't real. How could you possibly be part of the true god cult? All of this must be a coincidence, right? The prayer was tampered with, yes. Someone must be trying to frame you, to drive a wedge between us. There's a traitor in your family. Mobai's smile remained unchanged. In terms of her quality, N.A. was already actively seeking excuses for him and trying to exonerate him. This was a good stage, but not enough. Her emotional reaction needed to be even more intense. She also needed the third layer of suggestion. Mobai looked at the pale N.A., who was waiting for his answer in silence. He opened his mouth and uttered a single word. Chaos. N.A.'s pupils lost focus. The scenes in her eyes and the color of the sky around her shifted between light and dark, as if she were in the present, yet also back at that scene on the altar in the past. The events of the past few days played in her mind like a slideshow, being constantly scrambled. One moment she was being hunted, the next she had just stepped out of Swotuo City, one moment she was finishing off cultists of the true god cult, the next it was the night she first met Mobai. Countless memory fragments played chaotically in her mind. Chaos. Her mind was in utter chaos. Ah. N.A. cried out in pain toward the sky, her brows furrowed tightly. Beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, and her body went limp, collapsing onto the ground. This is real, not fake. This is fake, not real. I can't tell them apart. N.A. clutched her head tightly. Terror, cowardice, love, confusion, countless unspeakable emotions intertwined, surged, and exploded in her eyes. Her body trembled violently under the control of these emotions. A familiar sense of warmth came from her hand. Trembling, N.A. looked up. Into her eyes came Mobai's handsome face and those eerie golden rippled eyes. Mobai leaned down to her ear and whispered a single word. Desire. All the emotions in N.A.'s pupils froze. Conflict, confusion, anger, incomprehension, and terror all began to transform into a single emotion. Her heart couldn't help but beat rapidly. Mobai must have his reasons. She had to believe in Mobai. This sentence resonated in her heart, and the emotion in her eyes continued to swell. Looking at N.A.'s watery eyes, Mobai leaned close to her ear again, his warm breath hitting her face. Whether the world is real or fake, love is real. Love is real. N.A.'s affectionate eyes looked directly into Mobai's face. Her mind blurred, and everything seemed to return to that night. That single look when they first met. Ding. N.A. has believed your lie. Love is real. Trust level, 100%. Manifestation level, 30%. Successful manifestation. N.A.'s love has reached the third degree. Poof. A black veil descended from the sky, enveloping the entire altar. Under the moonlight, the two figures gradually merged. Kaden village, still that same small wooden house. Mobai gently brushed away the damp hair clinging to N.A.'s forehead, stood up to straighten his clothes, and walked out the door. After he left, N.A. slowly opened her tired but satisfied eyes. Mobai had already explained the reasons to her. Everything was for the divine position, he had to do this because of his faith in the true God. The people she had encountered were extremists whose faith had been corrupted. The reason she met them and was saved was due to the conflict between two different doctrines. Mobai wasn't wrong, she wasn't wrong, and the true God cult wasn't wrong either. For the sake of becoming a god, for Mobai, and even more for him. She needed to protect this secret. N.A. curled her lips into a slight smile and slowly closed her eyes as fatigue washed over her. Swotuo City. A luxurious carriage drove into the city, heading straight for the most luxurious courtyard in town. Soon, a letter written by Juliana herself was delivered to the great Archbishop of the Spirit Hall branch in Swotuo City. Staying for a few days. Then let her stay. The time given by the higher-ups is quite long anyway. Besides, I should find some suitable excuses, otherwise, if I get kicked out, no matter how much I invested early on, that's a matter for the future. The great Archbishop of the branch hall put down the letter and looked toward Mobai's courtyard. This action basically announced that young Master Mo had been won over by Juliana, they were already in the same boat. This increased his confidence a bit more. However, he still hoped they could be a bit more restrained. At this age, it wasn't appropriate to create a life. By the way, how old was young Master Mo again? Meanwhile, in Mobai's courtyard, Xiao Wu had just finished a round of studying in the study. Before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she received another task. The Heavenly Fox meditation technique. With different spirits, she could guess it was for different people. And this celestial fox, she wondered which vixen it was. Thinking of this, Xiao Wu puffed out her cheeks in dissatisfaction, her heart unable to settle down no matter what. Recalling Mobai's words that she could find him to learn at any time, Xiao Wu's eyes lit up. She quickly gathered several books of materials she had written and rushed toward Mobai's room without stopping. He hadn't taken her with him this time, and she didn't know if that was the reason, but after not seeing him for a few days, she felt an itch in her heart. It wasn't just to see who that person was. She simply wanted to see Mobai. Thinking of this, a faint blush appeared on Xiao Wu's small face. Chapter 63, The End and the Beginning. Mobai, Mobai. Xiao Wu quickly pushed open the door to Mobai's room. As soon as she entered, her gaze couldn't help but fall upon the other woman in the room, Juliana. She didn't even need to look closely, a strong fox-like scent belonging to Juliana's spirit rushed straight into her senses. But when her gaze fell upon Juliana's exquisite face and mature figure, the young girl's face stiffened slightly. It was the aura of a mature woman. How can it be like this? It's not fair. Xiao Wu murmured softly in her heart. Then, Mobai's voice reached her ears. Nana, Xiao Wu, the two of you will research the meditation technique together these next few days. Efficiency should be a bit faster that way. Try to resolve this matter before leaving. Meditation technique. A light flashed in Juliana's beautiful eyes. Before this young girl entered, Mobai had told her about the importance of the meditation technique, but she hadn't expected the key to it would actually lie with the girl in front of her. Furthermore, the eyes of the girl named Xiao Wu revealed an emotion similar to the one she had when looking at Mobai earlier. Unfortunately, she had ultimately been first. Juliana curled her charming lips slightly and extended her hand toward Xiao Wu. Please guide me. Mobai certainly wouldn't lie to her. If he said the key lay with the girl before her, then it definitely did, and she should do her best to cooperate. Thinking of this, a touch of tenderness couldn't help but flicker in her eyes. Xiao Wu stared at the outstretched palm, Mobai's words still echoing in her ears. She really didn't want to take it, but since it was Mobai's command, she felt incredibly conflicted, yet she still reluctantly reached out and shook it. Xiao Wu's small mouth murmured. If it weren't for Mobai, I wouldn't do this. Seeing the two women reach an agreement, the corner of Mobai's mouth curled slightly. These two were both his helpers and his foundation, one with 30% manifestation and one with 50% manifestation, both were of great use. By leveraging Juliana's status, she could help him conceal information at the Spirit Hall headquarters on one hand, and on the other hand, he could arrange for his own people to be inserted into Spirit Hall as support. With the interference from Spirit Hall reduced, the development speed of the true God cult wouldn't be hindered. Once they infiltrated the Spirit Hall in Swotuo City would truly become a qualified greenhouse in every sense. Come quickly, Tang-san. ... Half a month later, the final deadline for the mission arrived. Juliana, pleasantly surprised and amazed, carried the initially completed Heavenly Fox meditation technique, as she reluctantly left Mobai's side, following the Spirit Hall transport team on the road back to the Spirit Hall headquarters. Even though her heart was reluctant, for the sake of Mobai's divine position, she had to do her job well. Furthermore, concealing the identity of that spirit Duluo was also crucial for Mobai, she couldn't afford the slightest lapse. These two matters concerned him, and their importance was self-evident. Mobai's entrustment to her was also a sign of trust. It was the first time, and the most important time, she absolutely could not mess it up. With a look of determination in her eyes, Juliana took one last look at the city plaque of Swotuo City, curled her lips into a smile, and boarded the carriage prepared by Spirit Hall. At the same time, the Swotuo City Spirit Hall branch. After Bishop Fen Yin learned that Juliana had lived at young Master Mo's house for half a month and had never stepped out of the courtyard, he sighed softly. They were definitely in the same boat now. Two meanings, perfectly aligned. With the support of a rare support type titled Duluo on the continent, it was only a matter of time before Juliana ascended to the position of Holy Maiden of Spirit Hall. But if she wanted to charge toward an even higher position, perhaps it wasn't enough, not yet. It was also a bit lacking for everyone to recognize the relationship between the two, but it wasn't impossible to work toward. His gaze then fell upon the letter sent from young Master Mo's courtyard, delivered personally by Juliana. Having family members enter Spirit Hall to increase their influence was also a viable method. Leveraging the ranks of those two peak spirit saints, it was highly likely they could break through to Spirit Duluo. At that time, they would be a family no weaker than the Nine-Heart Begonia. This kind of influence should be able to play a role. As he was now tied to the same rope as Juliana, he naturally wouldn't refuse. It was also the right time to invest. Thinking this, he pressed down his seal of approval. ... Inside the courtyard, Mobai quietly listened to Shadow One's report. Whether it was Juliana's departure or the branch bishop's decision, everything reached his ears without missing a single word. He only needed to wait for a period of fermentation, and all channels in Swotuo City, both on the surface and in the shadows, would be under his control. The only slight trouble was the city lord of Swotuo City and the various local families, but these people's spirit power hadn't even reached Spirit Emperor, so they were not a concern. Once the subordinate spirit halls were all planted with informants from his family, the situation of someone reporting secrets would never happen again. And beneath this hazy veil, a single spark could gradually start a prairie fire. Go, act as recklessly as you wish. Mobai said softly, the eye of truth mark on his forehead flickering slightly. Yes, my lord. Shadow 1 knelt on one knee. As this command spread, the true God cult believers centered around Swotuo City, their eyes burning with fervor, kowtowed and responded respectfully, yes, my lord. A few days later, groups of 3 to 5 spread out in all directions like red dots. ... Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, more than 2.5 years had passed. At the gates of Swotuo City, a youth in a blue martial outfit with short, slightly messy hair gazed at the city plaque of Swotuo City. His heart was full of expectation, and suppressing his excitement, he couldn't help but want to step inside. But Tang San suddenly heard a concerned voice in his ear. Little San, I know you're anxious, but don't be in such a hurry. Let's find a place to rest first. Yu Xiaogong's hair was still messy, but the exhaustion that used to be in his eyes was gone. During the days since Mobai left, his teaching had been exceptionally smooth. He felt that his teacher-student relationship and bond with Little San had improved greatly, but now he had to face a reality, meeting Mobai again. Yu Xiaogong sighed deeply in his heart, while on the surface, he still wore that unchanging gentle smile. Yes, teacher, Tang San turned back and responded respectfully. But immediately after responding, he turned to a passerby and asked, hello, excuse me, do you know if there are any families or famous people with the surname Mo in Swotuo City? The passerby turned his head slightly, feeling that the strength on his wrist was quite heavy. This person's spirit power rank was higher than his own. Combined with his appearance, this should be the person the Lord spoke of, so. The passerby turned his head in confusion. Surname Mo, is there one? I don't recall any. Hearing this, Tang San's expression froze slightly, and he put on a somewhat forced smile. Could it be as he guessed, that it wasn't after 2 years, but many more years before they could meet in Swotuo City? He had clearly cultivated so hard, yet he didn't receive a good response. Brother Mobai, Xiao Wu. Chapter 64, Seeing Tang San again. A sense of disappointment rose within Tang San, yet he still held on to a sliver of hope. This was just an ordinary passerby who perhaps didn't know much about the happenings within the city. He constantly comforted himself in his heart. But he actually knew that with Mobai's personality, he was definitely not the type of person to easily fade into obscurity. Mobai's temperament back in N.A.N City, as well as his generous actions. If Mobai were truly in Swotuo City, he definitely wouldn't be unknown. Gold will shine wherever it is, and so will people. Behind him, Yu Xiaogong heard this news and truly revealed a faint, joyful smile. He comforted Tang San, who had a look of disappointment in his eyes, and patted his shoulder. Without realizing it, Little San was already almost as tall as him. Don't worry, Little San. Since there's an agreement, you will definitely meet. Since we've arrived first, we should make sure he hears your name the moment he arrives. That is the most correct way to do things. Teacher. Tang San looked back with a moved expression, the disappointment in his eyes gradually receding. Teacher was right. Since Mobai hadn't left a mark here yet, then he would be the one to do it. That way, they could easily find each other no matter what. First step, let's find a place to rest. Yu Xiaogong suggested. Tang San nodded in agreement and stepped into Swotuo City. Because they had departed in a hurry, it was already late by the time they reached Swotuo City. If they didn't find a place to rest soon, they might end up on the streets. On the way here, he had heard that Swotuo City was the second largest city in the Balak Kingdom, with a high volume of people and spirit masters being a common sight. As a 2-ring spirit elder who had just made a breakthrough to level 30, he was merely an average member of Swotuo City. As he was thinking this, a faint fragrance of roses suddenly reached Tang San's nose. His footsteps paused slightly, and he turned his head toward a hotel embedded with a giant rose symbol, the Rose Hotel. Quite a poetic name. Tang San thought to himself. Not just him, Yu Xiaogong also stopped and looked at the Rose Hotel. He was dazed for a moment before shifting his gaze to Tang San's clear eyes, his heart accelerated slightly, and his throat couldn't help but swallow. For some reason, after entering Swotuo City, his hidden emotions felt like they were about to burst. No, it wasn't time yet. Little San. Yu Xiaogong hadn't finished speaking. Let's stay here, teacher. It'll be hard to find another hotel at this hour. Tang San interrupted Yu Xiaogong, his tone natural and calm, seemingly not noticing anything. The joy on Yu Xiaogong's face increased further as he immediately replied, good. When the two entered the hotel and asked for 2 rooms at the front desk as usual, they were about to book the rooms under the receptionist's weird yet relieved gaze. A frivolous voice suddenly came from outside the hotel. 2 people wanting 2 rooms, isn't that a bit too greedy? Tang San turned to look. A blonde man with heterochromatic eyes walked into the hotel, flanked by a pair of muscular male twins. Judging by their positioning with the blonde man in the middle, they were likely his companions. But before Tang San could speak, Daimubai turned his gaze to the front desk. Besides, didn't I book a room yesterday? Even you guys shouldn't be so untrustworthy. Young Master Dai, it's not that I won't give it to you, it's just that every time the room is very hard to clean, sigh. The receptionist's face was conflicted for a moment, and after hesitating, he let out a long sigh and turned his gaze to Tang San. Sorry, guest, 1 room has indeed been reserved. Now there's only 1 room left, do you still want it? For a moment, Tang San frowned in thought. Yu Xiaogong, however, felt another surge of joy in his heart. Tang San asked the front desk, is the room big enough? Big, it's not a problem for even 3 people. Before the receptionist could speak, Daimubai's frivolous voice came first. As his gaze fell upon Tang San and Yu Xiaogong, a meaningful smile curled at the corners of his mouth. You're actually interested in this kind of soft-shell shrimp. You're tougher than me. Tang San's brow furrowed. In his eyes, that meaningful look translated into a form of mockery, soft-shell shrimp. It was a mockery of his teacher. He subconsciously reached out to block Daimubai's path as he tried to turn and go upstairs, his tone turning cold. Apologize. Daimubai looked playfully at the youth who had reached out. Although the boy looked ordinary, this protective streak gave him a unique aura that he quite liked. Additionally, his gaze glanced at the pondering middle-aged man. With that decadent aura, he was a soft-shell shrimp to begin with, so why couldn't people say it? Protection. Without strength, doing this would only lead to embarrassment. But seeing as they were of the same kind, he would let it go. Daimubai waved his hand. Sorry. The perfunctory tone was obvious. Just as Tang San wanted to make him take it seriously, his arm was suddenly pulled by Yu Xiaogong. Forget it, little San, the other party has already apologized, and Yu Xiaogong's gaze toward Dai Mubai held a hint of deep meaning. Perhaps we will have dealings in the future. Boss Fu had mentioned Dai Mubai to him in the letter. However, Yu Xiaogong's gaze was met with a contemptuous look from Dai Mubai. Don't look at me, I don't have your kind of preferences. After saying that, Dai Mubai turned and led his twins to the top floor. Yu Xiaogong's face flushed slightly, but thinking that they were heading to Shrek Academy tomorrow, he exhaled and calmed his emotions. Once they reached Shrek and he revealed his identity, he would let the other party see his abilities. For now, the priority was the matter at hand. Let's go, little San, get some rest early, there's work to do tomorrow, Yu Xiaogong said, still maintaining his gentle tone. Yes, teacher. On the other side, inside Mobai's courtyard. Mobai slowly opened his eyes, and the golden eye of truth mark on his forehead had almost condensed into a physical form. Through the eyes of his believers, he had already seen everything that happened at the Rose Hotel. He hadn't expected that the first thing Tang San did upon entering Swotuo City was to look for his whereabouts. Not bad, at least his previous arrangements here weren't in vain. Tang San hadn't disappointed his expectations either. But a meeting without any build-up would seem a bit abrupt and lack authenticity, nor would it achieve his goal. It was time to reel in the last hook he had left behind. Xiao Wu, your vacation is here. Mobai shifted his gaze. Beside him, Xiao Wu, who was immersed in a sea of books, was wearing a pair of glasses. She struggled out from the books, looked up at Mobai, and asked in confusion, what do you mean by vacation? Does it mean I don't have to study anymore? Yes, and by the way, go pick someone up. Who? Zhu Zuqing. At the same time, in the dark of night, Zhu Zuqing, dressed in black with a tall and straight figure, arrived at the gates of Swotuo City. She looked up at the city's plaque and then down at the True God cult flyer. A flash of fervor crossed her eyes. My God. Chapter 65, Cultist Zhu Zuqing. Zhu Zuqing's encounter with the True God cult was even more coincidental than she had imagined. It was simply that a True God cult cultist had found a heavily injured and unconscious young girl on the edge of the Stardo Great Forest. There were many such people, but Zhu Zuqing was the most special one. Despite the pursuit of spirit emperors and spirit kings, Zhu Zuqing, who wasn't even a spirit grandmaster yet, actually managed to flee so far, all the way from the center of the Star Luo Empire's capital to the border of the Heaven Do Empire. Zhu Zuyun had also gone to great lengths. One must know that back then, under the pursuit of several spirit kings, Juliana had almost died at the hands of the True God cult in just over a day. A sharp-tongued but soft-hearted older sister, and an oblivious younger sister. After Zhu Zuqing was picked up, her pursuers were like headless flies that had lost their target. After searching around for a bit, they declared Zhu Zuqing missing. The result was that Zhu Zuqing successfully came to know the True God cult, and after witnessing several rituals in just a few short months, she joined the True God cult like a drowning person clutching at the last reed. Under the dual stimulation of the moon dew and the meditation technique, she gradually transformed into a True God cult cultist. The more intense her desire to escape the shackles of fate, the more her faith grew under the nourishment of the two. For now, she was at least qualified. That was why she gained the eligibility to see him. At the same time, it was to refine her meditation technique. Only a meditation technique that was compatible with one's spirit could unleash its maximum potential. Zhu Zuqing was currently practicing the soft bone rabbit visualization method. Even with its impressive boost, it still hadn't reached the optimal effect. It was perfectly appropriate for Xiao Wu to go and pick her up. Mobai withdrew his consciousness from Zhu Zuqing's perspective, stood up, walked to Xiao Wu's side, personally removed her glasses, and said, Go on, Xiao Wu. Then, Mobai, I'll be going now. Xiao Wu's cheeks were flushed red as she gently pushed away Mobai's hand that had removed her glasses. Not having to read was great, but the thought of not being by Mobai's side wasn't so great. But could being by Mobai's side even be considered a vacation? Her mind was a bit of a mess, and her head felt a little hot. Under Mobai's encouraging gaze, a still dazed Xiao Wu walked out of the room. Mobai watched Xiao Wu's figure disappear from his sight. Although Xiao Wu had been constantly pressured by him to learn various things, with the high-intensity resource support, her cultivation had easily broken through to the rank 30 spirit elder level, reaching as high as rank 33. At this age and rank, she was more than capable of doing another thing with Zhu Zuqing. After all, the Shrek 7 devils also needed to be complete, didn't they? Boys needed more comradeship, whether true or false. Self-righteous concealment can become a bottomless pit in an instant, and that kind of drop is no weaker than any other blow. Mobai shifted his gaze to the table where he had just been sitting. A letter embossed with the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda was a letter sent by Ning Fengji, the sect master of the 7 treasure glazed tile school, to Flender. A certain little princess had also arrived here, but her purpose wasn't as simple as it originally was. One could only say it was indeed the 7 treasure glazed tile school. They even knew that Swotuo City housed a support system spirit master who was about to break through to become a titled Duluo. Was it to observe, or to recruit? He had no way of knowing. But for someone without mental resistance to enter this city, it was no different from a sheep entering a wolf's den. How to arrange her role had become a minor issue. Mobai stroked his chin in thought. A moment later, Xiao Wu brought the cold-faced Zhu Zuqing to kneel before him. Zhu Zuqing's eyes were filled with determination as she looked at the youth before her, who had his eyes closed. He was handsome and exuded a temperament that made anyone feel warmth and compassion at first sight. God loves the world. Even if his appearance was somewhat less than she had imagined, this temperament wouldn't lie. This was her God. Greetings, my God. A God who could pull her out of the mire and grant her freedom. Mobai slowly opened his eyes, feigning depth. The moment Zhu Zuqing saw those golden pupils, the determination in her heart grew even stronger. Her talent for being unable to see her own toes was indeed among the best of all the women he had seen, but she wasn't the only one. Yin, Shadow One, and Juliana weren't much weaker. This meeting between the two was only to confirm one thing, and the matter to be confirmed had already been verified the second Zhu Zuqing spoke, his second spirit ability, breaking delusion, which could identify lies. Zhu Zuqing hadn't lied with those 4 words just now. As one of the people who generated power of faith before he even had a chance to use hypnosis, and especially as one of the main cast, Zhu Zuqing was unexpectedly easy to fool. It was probably because she had been raised in her family since childhood, groomed to be the royal fiancé. Aside from cultivation, she had basically no contact with the complexities of the outside world. The coldness on her face was not just a way to keep strangers away, but also a barrier against the unknown outside world. Falling for the temptation of the true god cult so quickly showed that her mind was simpler than imagined, even a bit dense. She could have left her family and set out on her own like many others to escape the imprisonment of fate, yet she ultimately chose to find Dai Mubai to fight against fate. But it was foolish. Without Tang San's resources, she would have only ended up losing her life for nothing or being imprisoned until death. This was the result of a single-minded way of thinking cultivated since childhood. Now, it had benefited him. He had gained a good believer. Having confirmed that Zhu Zuqing hadn't lied to him and truly regarded him as God, he didn't need to say more. Mobai merely made eye contact with Zhu Zuqing and, without saying a word, gently waved his hand. Xiao Wu immediately understood, her slightly held breath relaxed, and a bright smile appeared on her face. She wasn't an enemy. Let's go, Zuqing. Xiao Wu enthusiastically looped her arm around Zhu Zuqing's. It was finally rare to have a peer she could communicate with. Usually, Mobai, Yin, and the others were all cultivating, and she was always studying. With a vacation and someone her age, her originally suppressed playful heart surged like never before. Zhu Zuqing's expression froze as a sense of guilt welled up in her heart. Had she done something wrong? Had she offended the Lord God, causing him not to say a single word to her? But the girl beside her looked so excited and even intimately called her, Zuqing. Could it be that she hadn't done anything wrong? Was it just that she hadn't yet reached the qualification to communicate with the Lord God? At that thought, Zhu Zuqing's fists tightened slightly, and she looked up with eyes full of determination. I understand, my God. I will certainly not fail your expectations. Hey, Xiao Wu's joyful expression paused as an inexplicable feeling welled up in her heart. She blinked, unable to describe or explain it. Mobai stared into Zhu Zuqing's eyes, not knowing what she had imagined. But since Zhu Zuqing didn't speak, he let it be. He nodded slightly, as if agreeing with Zhu Zuqing's view. Having received a response, a hint of joy finally appeared on Zhu Zuqing's cold face, and she then sincerely took her leave. Xiao Wu was stunned for a moment, then followed Zhu Zuqing's departing steps, praying in her heart that it wasn't what she imagined. After the 2 girls left, Mobai beckoned, and a dark shadow appeared. Shadow 1 stood respectfully by his side. The plan can begin. Initiate the conflict. He wanted this city to have no rumors of him, yet have clues about him everywhere. First, it would be Dai Mubai. The next day, Tang San and a slightly satisfied-looking Yu Xiaogang came out of the Rose Hotel. Tang San's expression carried a hint of confusion, but more so admiration. Even if that blonde man had given him a very bad first impression, had he really been conducting physical combat training with his teammates all night? Sleeping next door, he could clearly feel the vibrations. Chapter 66, Tang San's anger. Working this hard wasn't something an ordinary person could endure. Teacher, where are we going today? Tang San asked Yu Xiaogang, who was up ahead asking passersby for information. Having obtained the exact information, Yu Xiaogang looked back and gave him a confident smile. Shrek Academy, an academy that only recruits monsters. Monsters, a hint of doubt flashed in Tang San's eyes. Rank 20 before the age of 12, with 200-year spirit rings, Yu Xiaogang introduced proudly. However, as these requirements entered Tang San's mind, images of himself, Mobai, and Xiao Wu couldn't help but surface. Brother Mobai had already reached the level of a rank 30 spirit elder at the age of 10, Xiao Wu had met the requirements at 8, and he himself far exceeded them as well. Was it hard? Monsters. But he didn't say those words out loud. He knew very well that his teacher's self-esteem was quite fragile. As an academy, it should have existed for a while. They would likely know more about the city's affairs than random passersby, making it easier to ask about Brother Mobai and the others. A short while after Tang San and Yu Xiaogang left, Dai Mubai yawned and walked out of the Rose Hotel with somewhat unsteady steps. Shrek Academy, which was just that small village, consisted of a simple table and an elderly man at the admissions desk. Li Yusong stretched. With Shrek Academy's harsh recruitment conditions, it was difficult to recruit even a few students in a year. This year was the same. There were about 20 applicants, but not a single one met the criteria. Besides today, there was only 1 day left before admissions closed. It seemed unlikely they'd get anyone this year. It was fine if they didn't recruit anyone. The application fees weren't refundable anyway, and 20 some fees made for a decent income. Once split among the teachers, they could enjoy themselves a bit. Also, I need to remember exactly how much money there is. Otherwise, that stingy Flender will definitely embezzle some. I have to be on guard against a man who can round off a zero. Li Yusong sighed with emotion as he looked up at the sky. However, he saw a pair of framed glasses glinting white in the sunlight. His heart instantly tightened, and he stood up from his stool. He remembered all too well how much a certain someone held grudges. Li Yusong gave an awkward smile. FL, Flender, WH, what are you doing here? Speaking ill of someone behind their back, only to be caught by the person himself. Even if he had the advantage of age, the other party was not someone who understood manners or respected the elderly. Flender glanced at Li Yusong, gave a snort, and withdrew his gaze. The time his eyes lingered on Li Yusong wasn't even as long as the time they spent on the box containing the application fees. Before Li Yusong could recover from the tension of being stared at, he was stunned again. Seeing Flender look away so easily, his behavior seemed somewhat inexplicably abnormal. He didn't even reach for the application fees directly, which was even more unusual. There were 2 possibilities for this situation, either a sucker had arrived, or an even bigger sucker had arrived. Could it be, someone actually took a liking to this rundown place called Shrek Academy? Xiaogang. Flender's voice rang out, tinged with a bit of joy. Li Yusong couldn't help but look over, seeing Yu Xiaogang, a man with a somewhat decadent air, and the youth beside him. The way the 2 were dressed clearly showed they weren't high-ranking officials or nobles. So, they must be acquaintances. As such, a thought occurred to him, they were going through the back door. When the academy was founded, the recruitment rules were set by Flender alone. Now, was he going to break his own rules in private? He had just spoken ill of the man, should he turn a blind eye? But once such a precedent was set, it would be hard to stop. Li Yusong was still hesitating when the youth was pushed in front of him by Flender. Test him, follow the rules. Flender said with a hint of pride. In the letter, Yu Xiaogang had already told him Tang San's basic information. He had never doubted his friend's judgment of people. Seeing this, Li Yusong glanced at Flender's expression. After confirming he wasn't putting on an act or hinting at money, he followed the rules to test spirit power and check bone age. The results were all surprising, even shocking. 12 years old, rank 30 spirit elder. This kind of talent had even broken the record for the fastest breakthrough to spirit elder on the entire continent. No wonder Flender came here personally. No wonder, a true prodigy and monster. Flender and Xiaogang looked at each other and smiled upon seeing Li Yusong's shocked expression. Li Yusong's voice came again, then, there are no issues with the previous items, so we can skip them. But for the last one, Dai Mubai is currently. Just then, Dai Mubai called out from not far away, I'm right here. His voice still carried a hint of frivolity. This shout drew Tang San's attention. Seeing the blonde man whom he had a bit of admiration for, a flash of surprise crossed his eyes. So this person is also a monster. Dai Mubai's gaze fell on Tang San's face, which was undisguised and full of curious scrutiny. He had heard the test results just now, a 12-year-old spirit elder. Not bad. His build was somewhat upright, and although his looks were a bit lacking, it was all the same once the lights were out. A slight smile curled at the corner of Dai Mubai's mouth as he took a stance. Your name is Tang San, right? Then come. Tang San turned to look at Yu Xiaogang and Flender, only to be told that the final part was a practical combat test. He turned back, took a deep breath, and looked at Dai Mubai. He was also curious about what level this monster before him was at. Blue-silver binding. Tilde. A satisfied soft moan echoed across the field. Flender, Yu Xiaogang, Li Yusong, and Tang San, who was standing on the sidelines, looked with confusion at Dai Mubai, who was wrapped in a cocoon of blue-silver grass. Flender's expression darkened slightly as he barked, be serious. Under this reprimand, Dai Mubai finally focused. His gaze toward Tang San became increasingly satisfied, numbing and tight, it was exactly to his liking. But it wasn't good to be too blatant right now. White tiger possession. Dai Mubai shouted deeply, and 3 spirit rings rose from beneath his feet, one of which suddenly lit up. Suddenly, a white light wave broke through the constraints of the blue-silver grass and shot straight toward Tang San, who was currently on high alert. The moment the light wave arrived, Tang San turned and jumped away. A moment later, the battle ended. Although Tang San's rank was 1 level higher than in the original story, he was still only able to force out Dai Mubai's 3rd spirit ability. At this moment, his face was somewhat pale, clearly indicating a massive consumption of spirit power. Not bad. Flender finally showed a relaxed smile. Being able to force out the 3rd spirit ability of a rank 37 spirit elder was already considered up to standard, perhaps even exceeding it. By all logic, Tang San was perfectly suited to join Shrek Academy. After all these years, Xiaogang still managed to give him a surprise. Flender placed a hand on Yu Xiaogang's shoulder and said heroically, let's go. We haven't seen each other in years, let's have a good catch-up. Also, Dai Mubai, you take little San to the dormitory. Yes, Dean, Dai Mubai agreed, his increasingly satisfied gaze falling on Tang San. Let's go. A hint of worry flashed in Yu Xiaogang's eyes. He knew exactly what had happened last night, but little San was simply unaware. But before he could speak, he was forcibly pulled away by Flender. Li Yusong followed silently behind, hoping to score a good meal. Only Tang San and Dai Mubai were left on the scene. Dai Mubai took the lead, and Tang San naturally followed. Along the way, the two talked quite a bit. Tang San mentally labeled Dai Mubai with tags like, top-tier martial soul, and, wealthy young master. Until he heard Dai Mubai mention that he was very famous in the city. Tang San's mind stirred, wasn't this a great opportunity to ask around? Then boss Dai, have you heard of a youth surnamed Mo? Surnamed Mo, Dai Mubai's expression froze slightly. In his eyes, that glimpse from several years ago immediately surfaced. That period was his most humiliating time, even though much time had passed, the impression was extremely deep. However, it wasn't a good impression. He replied in a poor tone. That blind man. Blind man. Tang San was stunned, and then his expression gradually turned gloomy, even more so than when Dai Mubai had previously insulted Yu Xiaogang by calling him a soft-shell shrimp. Chapter 67. Inexplicable Anger. Dai Mubai, who had been watching Tang San's expression, thought to himself that things were looking bad. This atmosphere was even colder than what was said yesterday, he could even see a hint of sharpness in Tang San's eyes. Dai Mubai had clearly stepped on a landmine with those 2 words, blind man. He couldn't help but curse inwardly, wondering how he'd failed to hold his tongue again. But he immediately forced a hearty smile and said to Tang San, I only saw him once 3 years ago, so I'm not sure about the details. But Fatty might know something, he goes to that courtyard often. Tang San let out a soft breath, reining in the sharp glint in his eyes. Who is Fatty? The Dai Mubai before him didn't have the strength to threaten Brother Mobai at all. Even if Brother Mobai wasn't good at fighting, he had many guards around him. There was only one other possibility. Something unexpected had happened to Brother Mobai that he didn't know about. Seeing that he'd successfully diverted the topic, a flash of joy crossed Dai Mubai's face. Fatty is called Ma Hongjun. He's one of the current 3 students at Shrek. His spirit is the evil fire phoenix. Dai Mubai introduced him while leading the way toward another branch of the village. However, they hadn't walked far when they heard crying and shouting from the village entrance. Xiao Kui, don't go. Help, help, help me. They saw a fatty, covered in tears and snot, pestering a farm girl with lively eyes. But no matter how much he pleaded, it was to no avail. The girl bit her lip and shook off his hand, her eyes instinctively glancing toward the arriving Dai Mubai and Tang San. I'm sorry, you're a good person. She said this, but she was relieved in her heart. If it weren't for her master's arrangements, she wouldn't have wanted any contact with Ma Hongjun. Now that the people had arrived, her goal was complete. Ma Hongjun stared blankly at the girl's departing figure and hurriedly got up to chase after her. Xiao Kui. That spirit Duluo lord had been in secluded cultivation for a month now. Without that lord's spirit power treatment, his evil fire was becoming almost impossible to suppress. He had finally found a woman who could communicate with him normally, how could he give up so easily? Noticing Ma Hongjun stubbornly following her out of the corner of her eye, the girl changed direction and ran straight toward Tang San and Dai Mubai. Please, help me. Hearing the plea for help, Tang San instinctively reached out to protect the girl behind him, blocking the relentlessly pursuing Ma Hongjun. She's unwilling, so why force her? Ma Hongjun froze, looking up at Dai Mubai and the unfamiliar youth before him. But the more he was blocked, the more the evil fire in his heart became uncontrollable. He said impatiently, mind your own business, get lost. Tang San frowned. Seeing a conflict brewing, Dai Mubai quickly stepped forward. Fatty, watch yourself. We'll be in the same academy from now on, it's better not to have a conflict. He then continued to explain to Tang San, this is Ma Hongjun. His spirit is the evil fire phoenix. Due to a defect in his spirit, he sometimes can't control his head and has a bit of a temper. Please bear with him. Spirit defect, Tang San muttered with a frown. But the long-suppressed evil fire surged in Ma Hongjun's heart, making him irritable. A flash of fire glinted in his eyes. Dai Mubai, you're going to stop me too. I call you boss to give you face, but don't think of yourself as the real boss. We've been doing our own things for years. You don't interfere with me, and I don't interfere with you. What do you mean by this now? The incident where he took the opportunity to raise prices and ignored my life and death was still vivid in his mind. Even after all this time, it was like a thorn in his heart. Dai Mubai's expression stiffened, then turned somewhat gloomy. This was supposed to be an event to show off his status. What the hell was this damn fatty Ma Hongjun getting angry about again? If you want to fight, come on. This young master's fire hasn't been released yet. Ma Hongjun met Dai Mubai's eyes fearlessly, the fiery color in his eyes deepening. A phoenix cry rang out behind him, and a fire phoenix with wisps of black flames appeared. Dai Mubai gave a heavy snort, and a tiger's roar echoed. A white tiger with heterochromatic eyes appeared behind him, erupting with a fearless aura to counter. You two little brats. Flender just left, and you're already causing trouble for me. Before the two could act, a deep voice infused with spirit power rang out. Just the vibration of the sound wave suppressed the white tiger and phoenix spirits manifesting in the air. The eyes of the two immediately cleared up significantly, and they both looked in the same direction. They saw a man who wasn't tall but radiated a wild aura walking over with large strides, his face wearing a somewhat arrogant and dissatisfied expression. Teacher Zhao, Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun hurriedly called out. Zhao Wuji's expression was clearly unfriendly, if they didn't back down quickly, they wouldn't escape a beating. Zhao Wuji glanced sideways at the bared claw spirit phantoms behind them that hadn't been fully retracted. Not putting them away yet. Why are you embarrassing yourselves in front of the new student? Yes, yes, yes. Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun responded obediently, their previous aggressive stance completely gone. As for you, little girl, go back, Zhao Wuji said, turning to the girl behind Tang San. The girl nodded and left quickly. Ma Hongjun raised his hand and opened his mouth to ask her to stay, but under Zhao Wuji's fierce gaze, he pulled his hand back like a quail. Zhao Wuji snorted again before shifting his gaze to Tang San. Let's go, kid, I'll take you to the dormitory. Please wait a moment, teacher Zhao. Tang San quickly spoke up. Compared to going to the Shrek Academy dormitory, he was more concerned about Brother Mo Bai's affairs right now. He shifted his gaze to the now safer Ma Hongjun. The fire in this person had clearly vanished, he should be able to talk properly now. Excuse me, do you know someone named Mo Bai? Young Master Mo, Ma Hongjun immediately looked up. Hearing this familiar form of address, Tang San immediately perked up. Yes, that's right, it's young Master Mo. Ma Hongjun suppressed his anger and looked at Tang San suspiciously. Young Master Mo rarely went out, even he had only seen him once or twice, and that was because he frequently went to Mo Bai's courtyard. It was very difficult for outsiders to know young Master Mo's situation or his real name. Could the person before him know young Master Mo? Was this a case of the flood sweeping away the Dragon King's temple? Ma Hongjun forced a bit of a smile, though it looked somewhat comical against his fleshy face. Oh, you should have said so earlier. If you know young Master Mo, this was almost a misunderstanding. But Tang San didn't respond to his pleasantries, instead, he looked at him with piercing eyes, waiting for an answer. Ma Hongjun's fat face stiffened, but he still told him part of what he knew about Mo Bai. He also explained his spirit defect and the misunderstanding that had just occurred, and mentioned how he had received treatment from young Master Mo to increase the credibility of his words. This included the location of Mo Bai's courtyard and so on. And Tang San also got the one thing he wanted to know most. Brother Mo Bai's eyes really are blind. Brother Mo Bai's spirit is in body martial soul, and his eyes are his spirit. If he's blind, doesn't that mean his spirit is ruined? Then Brother Mo Bai. A hint of worry rose in Tang San's heart, mixed with a trace of inexplicable joy. Chapter 68, The Gathering. After obtaining this result, Tang San no longer had the time to go to the Shrek dormitory. After saying a word to the three of them, he walked away quickly in the direction he had come from. This brat is yet another one who refuses to be disciplined. Zhao Wuji watched Tang San's retreating back as he used a strange pace to leave, and said disdainfully, when you come back, wait and see how I polish you down. He could tell that Tang San really had urgent business, so he didn't stop him. Besides, that concerned Mo Bai, young Master Mo. Other teachers didn't know, but as the vice dean, he was very clear about it, the true financial backer behind Shrek Academy. Or rather, creditor would be more accurate. I remember you two are birds of a feather, so why did you start a ruckus today? And embarrassing yourselves in front of outsiders at that. Zhao Wuji glanced at the two people behind him. A flash of pink light simultaneously flickered in the eyes of Dai Mubai and Ma Hongjun. The evil fire has been suppressed for too long, and for a moment, I couldn't control my temper, Ma Hongjun said sullenly. On the other side, Tang San had already quickly left Shrek Academy and stepped into the bustling streets of Swotuo City. After asking a passerby for directions and preparing to head out to search, a voice that couldn't be more familiar suddenly reached his ears. Hey, isn't this little San? Tang San's spirits suddenly lifted. He turned his head and saw Xiao Wu, who had existed in his memories. 3 years later, Xiao Wu had become even more clever and moving, the light in her eyes even brighter, and her height was close to his. Her temperament was no longer as arrogant as before, instead, it revealed a touch of intelligence, clearly having matured quite a bit. It really is little San. Xiao Wu walked quickly to Tang San, her eyes staring at Tang San's ordinary face, confirming for a long time before she grinned, it really is little San. Xiao Wu, long time no see. Seeing that he had been recognized, Tang San smiled and greeted her. His gaze swept past Xiao Wu and fell upon the woman in black with an imposing figure who had just been standing beside her. Just walking on the street attracted countless gazes, as if the two of them were the focus, the center of the world. But it wasn't Shadow One, nor was its sister N.A.N. Is she from the Mobai family? Zhu Zuqing frowned slightly, looking at the person who was sizing her up. If it weren't for Lord God saying that her meditation technique was key to Xiao Wu, she wouldn't have come out to go shopping and play with Xiao Wu, she didn't have much time to cultivate as it was. That's right, Big Brother Mobai. Tang San suddenly regained his senses and looked eagerly at the Xiao Wu in front of him. I heard Big Brother Mobai. Tang San's words tangled and repeated in his mouth. For a moment, he couldn't bring himself to ask about blindness or going blind. But Xiao Wu had already seen Tang San's expression clearly. Recalling what Mobai had said before leaving, her expression also carried a hint of hesitation, and her eyes scanned the pedestrians around them. Quote. He is blind, Xiao Wu confirmed in a low voice. Upon receiving a definite answer, Tang San's expression froze. While his eyes were filled with disbelief, the beating of his heart couldn't help but speed up a little. Why? It's a secret, but regarding your relationship, Mobai should have told you, right? Xiao Wu asked in return. A secret. Tang San's expression was slightly startled. Told him. Bits and pieces of the time he spent with Mobai flashed through his mind, a single phrase, until the things said to him before he left that last day. First awakening, second awakening, Big Brother Mobai is attempting, a third awakening. And blindness is the price, or perhaps the prerequisite. Thinking of this, Tang San's heart pounded, and for a moment, he didn't know whether to feel fortunate or disappointed. So it was this matter. Tang San's smile couldn't help but carry a hint of bitterness. Don't worry, little San, trust Mobai, Xiao Wu said encouragingly. Seeing this, Tang San could only nod. The urge he originally had to go to Mobai's courtyard to confirm had temporarily ceased. He was afraid that even if Big Brother Mobai succeeded, all his own efforts would still not be enough to keep up with Big Brother Mobai's pace, leaving him far behind. He was also afraid that Big Brother Mobai would fail. His current feelings were indescribable and unclear. Tang San looked up at Xiao Wu with complex eyes, sighed inwardly, adjusted his state, and asked, Xiao Wu, what are you all going to do? Of course, to play, Xiao Wu said righteously. Not only was Tang San stunned by this sentence, but even Zhu Zuqing beside her couldn't help but turn her head away, unable to bear watching. At her age, how could she play around? Only Xiao Wu could have such confidence, stemming from the favor of Lord God. Zhu Zuqing glanced slightly, a hint of envy rising in her heart. What about you, little San? Xiao Wu asked curiously. Me, I came here with teacher to enter an academy and study. Enter an academy to study. Xiao Wu's eyes brightened slightly. It seemed Mobai had mentioned an academy to her. In her memories, the imposing aura of when she was the big sister at N.A.N Academy couldn't help but flash by. This seemed more interesting than shopping and buying things. It had been a long time since she was the big sister, and she felt inexplicably itchy inside. She couldn't beat Mobai, but as for others, including Tang San, she now had full confidence in defeating them. So she was determined to be the big sister. The light in Xiao Wu's eyes grew brighter, and she coughed a few times. Little San, which academy are you joining? Shrek, Xiao Wu, have you heard of it? Tang San looked at Xiao Wu with some expectation. Although this academy was recommended by teacher, and the conflict just now had witnessed that there were indeed many geniuses in the academy, as well as the teacher Zhao whose strength was unknown. But he would rather believe what Xiao Wu said. Xiao Wu thought for a while and shook her head. She spent most of her time focusing on learning the tasks given by Mobai and rarely went out to actively learn about things in Swotuo City. Shrek, an academy whose name she had never heard of, Tang San's expression fell a bit. Don't worry, little San, I'll go with you to check it out. Meanwhile, on the street not far behind the three of them, a charming young girl with a water blue exquisite skirt was listening intently. Since she arrived on this street, just like other passers-by, she had simultaneously noticed the cute pink-haired girl and the cold woman in black. Out of curiosity, she couldn't help but follow for a stretch, and then she heard the conversation between the three. Shrek, Ning Rongrong murmured softly, a few rays of light flashing in her eyes. Whether the academy was powerful or not didn't matter to her, what mattered was whether there were good-looking or fun people. Behind it all, Mobai sat upright in the room, taking in everything that happened in Shrek Academy and Swotuo City. The corners of his mouth curled up, everything seemed as if nothing had changed. But everything was under control. The third awakening was just an appetizer. There was something more important coming later. Yin, Mobai called out softly. Yin nodded slightly at the side, and on her forehead, the moon symbol was exceptionally vivid, while the aura and power she radiated were infinitely close to a transcendent sense of oppression. She was only one spirit ring away from being a titled Duluo. Chapter 69, Spirit Core Condensation Method. With the support of the meditation technique and the power of faith, Yin had at least a 50% chance of condensing a 100,000-year spirit ring. Yet, this had already been the case a month ago, but Mobai had not chosen to let Yin condense the spirit ring first. After all, a condensed 100,000-year spirit ring was a very good suggestive material. In the cognition of most spirit masters on the continent, a 100,000-year spirit ring was extremely difficult to hunt, requiring at least 2 or more titled Duluo to have a chance. And this was a good hint. Their next stop was undoubtedly Heaven Do City, the Sunset Forest, the Ice and Fire Yin Yang Well, and other such places. Unless Yin did not appear in front of people, her identity would definitely not be hidden. That place was truly one of the centers of Duluo continent. It was not just Ian who needed protection, he also needed protection. If he could manifest subordinates at the titled Duluo level, it would save a lot of trouble. This required the 100,000-year spirit ring to be shown to Tang-san from scratch. As for how to fabricate the lie about Ian's cultivation rising so rapidly, from the very beginning, the appearance of the god had given a prophecy. Divine position successor, an extremely good excuse. Additionally, Xiao Wu had not been idle these past 2 years. Mo Bai's gaze fell on a book placed on his desk, Spirit Core Condensation Method. The concept of the Spirit Core came from the future and was even an important item that ran through the entire combat system of Duluo continent. It had extremely harsh requirements for mental force itself, and the meditation technique was a method to improve mental force. The two complemented each other, achieving an effect where 1 + 1 was far greater than 2. As the Blue-Silver Emperor, Ian had sufficient spirit power and was also the most suitable candidate to be the first practitioner. Spirit Masters at the current stage, including titled Duluo, had 1 blue bar to fight 1 blue bar, but the Spirit Core was like mana regeneration equipment, which could maintain the continuous combat of a Spirit Master without worrying about being worn down by wheel battles. With the Spirit Core, Ian would be a source of endless spirit power and a healing supplement machine by his side. As long as Ian did not die, it would be difficult for him to be in life-threatening danger. Go. Mo Bai said softly. Tang-san had heard enough, it was time to see with his own eyes. Seeing is believing, hearing is deceptive. Ian was the final dose of strong medicine. ... Shrek Academy. Tang-san, third brother, daddy. Ma Hongjun prostrated himself at Tang-san's feet in great admiration, his eyes full of desire and regret, while his peripheral vision glanced from time to time at the 3 women following behind Tang-san, each of whom could be considered a stunning beauty. In all the years Shrek Academy had been running, there had been very few female students, let alone 3 at once. To have the ability to recruit 3 people at once was enough for him to bow down. As for the previous conflict, was there one? Why didn't he remember? Tang-san looked at the fatty prostrate on the ground, feeling a bit awkward, scratching his head uncomfortably, and looked at the 3 women behind him. Hey, the 3 women, how did the last one come? Didn't he remember that there were only Xiao Wu and that woman in black? Fatty, what are you saying? Xiao Wu frowned and shouted. She was not an ignorant girl, how could she not understand the meaning behind his words? She wanted to come and play, not because she listened to Little San's opinion. Ning Rongrong, at the very back, looked at the dilapidated little village with a look of disgust, as well as the wooden plaque with the words, Shrek, written on it. Simple, the toilet in her house was more luxurious than this. Ma Hongjun scrambled up with a smile on his face, bowing and nodding indifferently, yes, I am called Fatty. I wonder how I should address the little beauty. Xiao Wu looked at the lecherous smile on that fat face, which couldn't even compare to a single hair of Mo Bai, and took a step back with a look of disgust on her small face. Ma Hongjun's expression stiffened, and he looked at Tang-san with a pleading gaze. As a result, he learned from Tang-san that Xiao Wu and the others came from young Master Mo, and he was immediately so frightened that he returned to his normal expression. If it was young Master Mo, he couldn't catch up even if he flattered 10 times. He had self-awareness in this regard. Moreover, that spirit Duluo of young Master Mo held the lifeline to the recovery of his spirit, and he was even a bit worried now whether his behavior just now would annoy the people in front of him. If they went back and said something bad about him, he would have to suffer the misery of the evil fire again. Should he try to salvage the situation? Thinking this, Ma Hongjun looked at Xiao Wu with a fawning expression. Compared to Ning Rongrong and the disgust on Xiao Wu's face, Zhu Zuqing, who was standing to the side, glanced at the face of Dai Mu Bai standing nearby and then withdrew her gaze calmly. A coincidence? No, it must be the will of the god. Ever since she fled the Star Luo Empire, she had joined the true god cult, but she had never paid attention to anything about her runaway fiancé. As a result, she met this fiancé of hers at the place where she met the god. It was definitely the god guiding her to end her attachments. She had thought that the person in front of her would feel guilty, but the other party was just like her, only glancing at her once and acting very calmly. Even the emotion in his eyes towards her was not as high as that of the boy named Tang-san. In that case, Zhu Zuqing exhaled softly, and the stone in her heart fell. There was no communication to begin with, so they could part on good terms and owe each other nothing. She could also wholeheartedly believe in the god. Hey, have you forgotten something? Shrek has Shrek's rules. If you want to enroll, you must first pass the test. Zhao Wuji, who was in the background, suddenly spoke. Flender had given instructions about the little princess of the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda, Ning Rongrong, and just now he heard the boy Tang-san say that the other 2 people were young Master Mo's people. But rules were rules, at least for now, he was in charge. Xiao Wu turned her inquiring gaze to Tang-san, and Tang-san recounted everything he had said in the morning. Almost everyone present could hear it. And before anyone else could speak, Ning Rongrong, who was standing at the very back of the group, suddenly raised her hand enthusiastically, I'll go first. Everyone cast their gaze over. Only then did Xiao Wu notice that a young girl had appeared behind them at some point, and she was quite good-looking. Ning Rongrong, under the gaze of everyone, held her head high and walked quickly to the crystal ball that Zhao Wuji had taken out. She placed her hand elegantly in front of the crystal, and bursts of blue light appeared, displaying her rank 26 spirit power, which she was proud of. The corners of Ning Rongrong's mouth curled up inadvertently, and her eyes glanced slightly at the reactions of the people around her. She could foresee the shocked expressions of everyone nearby. To have this rank at 12 years old was something to be proud of across the entire continent, and in this small academy, she would definitely be the center of attention. Average. It's okay. Not bad, but a bit lacking. That's good, I'm finally not at the bottom. When these words were spoken by Xiao Wu, Tang-san, and the others, Ning Rongrong's expression froze slightly. Huh, was she hallucinating? Zhu Zuqing glanced at the crystal ball and was not interested, but she couldn't resist Xiao Wu's pulling and tugging, so she came to Zhao Wuji. Ning Rongrong subconsciously took a step back, and then she saw the blue light blooming from the crystal ball of the woman in black in front of her. Rank 28, and she was even younger than her. How is this possible? Chapter 70, Quasi-Titled Duluo. Ning Rongrong, having received a blow, was somewhat dazed. But Sister Ayin's words reached her ears again. Hey, is there anything higher level? I see this only tests up to rank 30, it shouldn't be useful for me. Rank 30 is useless. Ning Rongrong cast an incredulous look at Xiao Wu. Zhao Wuji, however, did not have the slightest doubt, and out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the expression of the young miss of the 7 treasure glazed tile school. This was the perfect opportunity to dampen this young miss's arrogance. Tang San also wore a curious expression. He had been surpassed 3 years ago, but now he believed his cultivate speed was not inferior to Xiao Wu's. Afterward, he took out a higher level spirit power testing crystal ball. Xiao Wu placed her hand on it with satisfaction, and immediately, a brilliant light flashed. Still under 12 years old, yet, rank 33 spirit power. Ning Rongrong covered her slightly opened lips with her hand. It must be that she was still dreaming. How could anyone reach this rank at this age? Even the continent's records were not this exaggerated. I didn't expect that the record just broken by Tang San would be broken by you in the blink of an eye. Zhao Wuji also wore a look of satisfaction. Your spirit power meets the standard. According to the rules, you pass the first 3 rounds of testing. As for the final round. Upon hearing the words, final round, Daimu Bai was just about to step forward, but he was stopped by the ripple of spirit power spreading from Zhao Wuji. He looked up at Zhao Wuji in astonishment. This round was supposed to be his responsibility. Zhao Wuji grinned and counted the people in front of him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 is still missing. Zhao Wuji nodded while thinking, then suddenly shouted. Oscar. The sound wave carrying spirit power quickly spread throughout the entire village, causing a chorus of complaints, while a scruffy-looking guy pushed a food cart and ran over quickly. Zhao, teacher Zhao. Oscar, who had just stopped the cart and rushed to Zhao Wuji, didn't even have time to say a word before Zhao Wuji flung him into the middle of the 6 people. 7, all here. Zhao Wuji twisted his palms, his joints cracking. Final round, the 7 of you against me, very fair, right? As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the 3 original Shrek Academy students, Daimu Bai, Ma Hongjun, and Oscar, changed. Tang San looked at Zhao Wuji, who contained an overbearing aura, and glanced sideways, wanting to ask a question. But Daimu Bai, as if knowing something, answered in advance, rank 76 Spirit Saint, Spirit Vigorous Vajra Bear, nickname Immovable Bright King. Never mind us, even 7 Spirit Saints of the same rank wouldn't stand a chance of defeating teacher Zhao in a short time. It's clearly meant to dampen your spirits, and it indirectly implicated the 3 of us. Daimu Bai sighed. Ma Hongjun and Oscar looked like they wanted to cry but had no tears. They no longer hoped that Zhao Wuji would let them off, they only prayed it wouldn't hurt too much. I'll give you 1 minute to discuss. Zhao Wuji's tone carried a bit of confidence as he sat down on the dirt, closed his eyes in contemplation, and quietly kept a sliver of peripheral vision to see how the 7 would arrange themselves. Since things could not be changed. The 3 sighed helplessly and joined the discussion. This uncle. Tang San looked at Oscar and had just opened his mouth when he was interrupted by Daimu Bai. What uncle? He is one of the 3 current students of Shrek Academy, possessing innate full spirit power, and his spirit is a sausage, it's Oscar. It's just that his hair is a bit thick. As Daimu Bai spoke, he pulled on the drooping Oscar. Oscar listlessly raised his hand. Hello, everyone. Thinking about the beating he was about to receive, his mood could not improve at all. Innate full spirit power support system spirit. Ning Rongrong smiled indifferently. She must not have woken up today. In a mere village, everyone was better than her. She was the dignified young miss of the 7 treasure glazed tile school, the #1 support system tool spirit on the entire continent. But Ning Rongrong looked toward Ma Hongjun and Daimu Bai, who hadn't revealed their spirit yet. This fatty looked wretched and ugly. Surely he wasn't better than her. Ma Hongjun, Spirit Fire Phoenix, rank 28 spirit power. Daimu Bai, Spirit White Tiger, rank 37 spirit power. I am the oldest and have the highest spirit power, so let me take command for the first round. Daimu Bai stepped out first and said. The idea of forming a temporary team was temporarily accepted by everyone, only Xiao Wu, upon hearing the words, highest spirit power, had her eyes shining with brilliance. The purpose of her coming here was to become the boss. The time of 1 incense stick passed in the blink of an eye, and the battle began and ended quickly. No matter how much preparation they made, the support duo, Ning Rongrong and Oscar, were immediately swatted away by Zhao Wuji, and the remaining people were also swatted away in various directions one by one like bowling balls. Even though Tang San used various means and hidden weapons, without the enhancement of the Dragon Beard Needle, he could not break through Zhao Wuji's defense. For the first time, he truly felt the gap between himself and a high-rank spirit master. Xiao Wu, relying on her 3rd spirit ability, teleportation, barely managed to hold out until the very last moment. And just as Zhao Wuji, showing no tenderness toward the fairer sex, wanted to swat away the mentally exhausted Xiao Wu, an inexplicable ripple of spirit power arrived. Zhao Wuji's palm stopped in front of Xiao Wu, and he quickly retracted his spirit power. His expression changed as he bowed slightly backward. Greetings, Your Excellency. After paying his respects, Zhao Wuji slowly raised his head, looking at the beautiful, blue-haired woman walking from the village entrance with graceful steps. She exuded a gentle temperament, and his mind immediately recalled the spirit du Luo from young Master Mo's family. But the other party's aura clearly no longer belonged to the category of a spirit du Luo, she was only 1 step away from being a titled du Luo. Upon seeing Yin's arrival, Xiao Wu immediately shouted happily. Sister Yin. She immediately ran to Yin's side. Yin put her hands together, and the brilliant blue-silver grass appeared in front of her chest. A drop of jade dew from her fingertip followed the spirit power ripples of the blue-silver grass and fell into Xiao Wu's mouth. The small cheeks that had originally been pale due to excessive mental exhaustion instantly recovered their rosiness, visible to the naked eye. It was not just Xiao Wu. Yin gently waved her hand, and several drops of the liquid fell into the mouths of the 6 people who had been knocked flying in all directions. In less than a second, everyone recovered their ability to move. Tang San still followed that familiar feeling as he looked at Yin, a look of nostalgia flashing in his eyes, and called out along with Xiao Wu, Sister Yin. But, Your Excellency, how could this title be used for Sister N.A.N? A purple light flashed in Tang San's eyes, and his gaze landed almost entirely on the faint moon mark on N.A.N's head. He couldn't help but be dazed. Hearing these two affectionate calls, Zhao Wuji secretly thought, oh no. Although his attacks just now weren't heavy, they weren't light either, at least they looked very serious on the surface. Even if the other party was just a support system quasi-titled Duluo, he would rather provoke an attack system titled Duluo than a support system titled Duluo. Who knows how many family forces could be dragged into this later. Just young Master Mo's family alone was something he couldn't afford to offend. Chapter 71, It will definitely happen 2 in 1. It was just as well. The moment he sensed the aura, he had restrained his strength and hadn't struck that little rabbit brat Xiao Wu too hard. It shouldn't be. Zhao Wuji calculated in his heart. But this Tang San, who called her sister N.A.N, had struck quite heavily to broaden the horizons of the new students. Even if not serious injuries, minor ones were certainly inflicted. Although they recovered quickly under the means of the venerable one before him, a strike was still a strike. Hitting one's own junior right in front of their elder was bound to provoke anger. Thinking of this, Zhao Wuji's heart sank slightly. But then a warm voice reached his ears, it's all right. Zhao Wuji looked up, met that understanding expression, clasped his fists and nodded, thank you for your understanding, venerable one. N.A.N smiled warmly, her gaze shifting to Xiao Wu, who was clinging to her arm. She reached out and ruffled the smooth, long hair. She was the young master's personal maid, and Xiao Wu was a crucial companion to the young lord. Their relationship was exceptionally good. One could even say it was like that of sisters, or even mother and daughter. Having been in seclusion for some time, she was delighted by Xiao Wu's reaction. Witnessing this scene, a flicker of envy passed through Tang San's eyes. But soon, he felt N.A.N's gaze turn towards him. Long time no see, little San. It seems you've been working hard too. These warm words were like those a mother would say to a child returning home. Tang San couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart and nodded vigorously. Yes, it's been a long time. With the arrival of N.A.N, a quasi-titled Duluo, the final stage of the test came to a hasty end, and the result was good. Everyone passed the test. However, regarding this passing result, N.A.N, one of the 7, bit her lip slightly. During this test, she had at most displayed her spirit and was immediately eliminated. She hadn't even had time to attach any enhancement spirit abilities, meaning she had contributed nothing. Passing like this, didn't it mean she relied on her teammates to get through? N.A.N secretly clenched her fist, a feeling of unwillingness swirling in her heart. But everyone's attention was not on her, it was on that quasi-titled Duluo, the only one of her kind on the continent. Due to the unique nature of the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda spirit, no, to put it another way, one could even call it a flaw, its user could never break through the rank 79 spirit saint in their lifetime and could attach at most 7 spirit rings. Forget titled Duluo, even reaching spirit Duluo was a fantasy. Even as the number 1 support system tool spirit sect on the entire continent, they had never possessed a support system spirit master at the titled Duluo level. The appearance of a quasi-titled Duluo support system spirit master before them was undoubtedly a shock to all support system spirit masters across the continent. The 7 treasure glazed tile school, as the most renowned support system sect, naturally bore the brunt of it. Originally, they had thought the other party would still need some time to break through to titled Duluo, giving them time to win her over. With their sect's 2 Duluos, Sword and Bone, their capital for persuasion wouldn't be inferior to the spirit halls. But how could she be so young and break through so quickly? N.A.N couldn't help but lift her gaze to N.A.N, who walked ahead of everyone, her aura captivating enough to enthrall the crowd. Her expression held a trace of disbelief. Was there still time to send a message back now? A moment later, in a simple small wooden hut. What, going to hunt for a spirit ring so soon? Not only Tang San, but N.A.N also voiced her astonishment. Obtaining the 9th spirit ring for a titled Duluo was not that simple. Not only did one need to find a suitable plant-type spirit beast, but finding one of the right age was like finding one in a million. Not only were they difficult to hunt and kill, but they were also hard to track. Each investigation consumed enormous manpower and resources, taking at least a month or more. And the most important point was strength. Many spirit beasts, leveraging their physical advantages, could contend with titled Duluos at 80 or 90,000 years. Hunting them was even more difficult. Surely they couldn't rely on that so-called young Master Mo from the Mobai family, who hunted 50 or 60,000 year spirit beasts, to provide the 9th spirit ring for a titled Duluo. The same thought flashed through the minds of Tang San and N.A.N. Immediately followed by the thought, what a waste of a treasure. A support-type titled Duluo, the only one on the entire continent. Tang San opened his mouth, wanting to advise against it. But before he could, a crisp voice spoke up first. N.A.N, who had been silently standing behind everyone, stepped forward with a resolute expression and said, Miss N.A.N, if you are willing, our 7 treasure glazed tile school can fully assist you in hunting your 9th spirit ring. Even. No need. N.A.N raised her hand with a smile, cutting off N.A.N's next words. She stated the content without the conditions, but in essence, she had stated the condition, joining the 7 treasure glazed tile school. But the other party's condition held no meaning for her and was not within the young lord's expectations. Even the spirit hall was like that, let alone a 7 treasure glazed tile school. Hearing this, N.A.N's expression tightened. She still wanted to try again. But then she heard N.A.N look around at everyone. Her voice, though not loud, clearly reached everyone's minds, carrying an indescribable confidence. Do not underestimate the young lord. These words also brought a moment of silence to the scene. Everyone couldn't help but let their thoughts churn. Young lord, surely she meant that so-called young Master Mo. Do not underestimate, could it be they had some unknown capability? Come to think of it, they had rarely even met him, and the family, they had only seen a handful of people. They definitely couldn't claim to understand. Perhaps there really were hidden depths they were unaware of. Everyone's curiosity was itching unbearably, but they didn't have the qualification to ask further. They weren't relatives or close friends. In the end, it could only turn into words of blessing. Tang San was still conflicted inside. He was different from the others, he had known Sister N.A.N and Brother Mobai for a long time. But did he have the right to ask? Tang San looked up with self-doubt, only to meet Yin's gaze, which held a hint of a smile. He did, but now was not the time to speak. Tang San immediately understood the meaning in that look. Stunned, yet with a touch of joy, he realized the current situation wasn't the time to ask questions. Seeing the scene had quieted a bit, Ma Hongjun, who had been suppressing the evil fire within him and harbored no curiosity, cautiously raised his hand. Venerable one, then what about me? Yin gave him a reassuring nod. The gods loved all people, especially those within the young lord's plans. At this moment, it wasn't just Ma Hong handsome. There was also the person the young lord had specifically instructed to demonstrate ability in front of, N.A.N, the young miss of the 7 treasure glazed tile school. Those with spirit flaws were not limited to just one person. Then, in front of everyone, Yin summoned her 8 spirit rings one by one. Tang San once again felt an invisible sense of oppression from the difference in spirit power rank. But compared to his feeling of pressure, everyone else seemed to be basking in warmth, enjoying it. Ma Hongjun's expression was especially excited. What is this? Tang San asked curiously. Didn't I tell you this morning? Dai Mubai explained. Ma Hongjun's spirit mutated from a pheasant into a fire phoenix. It's a good mutation, but it has a spirit flaw. If the evil fire isn't released, it will scorch all his meridians until death. And this venerable one's special ability has the effect of treating spirit flaws. Treating spirit flaws. An exclamation rang out. Everyone, including Tang San, simultaneously shifted their gaze towards N.A.N, who was still standing in the most inconspicuous spot behind them. N.A.N seemed to realize her loss of composure, covered her mouth, and said no more. But the hidden light in her eyes grew even brighter. Tang San turned his head back from there and saw that Sister Yin had already condensed a drop of liquid containing faint golden light. While everyone was anticipating this drop of liquid, Tang San's gaze involuntarily drifted to the fleeting moon-shaped mark on Yin's forehead, and his heart jolted again. The legend from many years ago resurfaced in his mind. As the liquid dripped into Ma Hongjun's mouth, a satisfied exclamation made everyone frown. But at a visible speed, the constantly emanating hot and dry atmosphere from Ma Hongjun's body completely vanished. With a cry from his spirit, the phoenix spirit once again appeared before Tang San. But compared to the flames mixed with a hint of black during his earlier argument with Dai Mubai, they now appeared purer. Tang San was stunned. Was this treating a flaw? Or evolution? Perhaps, originally, there was no difference between the two. Flaws were merely products of insufficient evolution. Sister Yin truly had the ability to evolve spirits. But wasn't this the ability rumored to belong to the moon god? Why did Sister Yin have it? God, divine position. Tang San's pupils contracted slightly. In the past, it was just a failed attempt. But before the eyes that saw the future in Brother Mobai's family, such opportunities were countless. So they succeeded. Tang San swallowed lightly, his gaze burning as he looked at Yin with a pleading heart. But such a crucial matter was even more impossible to ask in front of so many people. Even though his curiosity was overwhelming, he could only forcefully suppress it. Thank you, Venerable One. Coming back to his senses, feeling completely at ease, Ma Hongjun immediately overwhelmed with emotion, I kowtowed in gratitude. This time's effect was much better than before. N.A.N, who took all of this in, was no less excited than Ma Hongjun. If spirit flaws could truly be cured, then herself, then the 7 treasure glazed tile school. No, she had to try again. N.A.N's body moved slightly, leaning forward. But then she heard Yin say softly. Everyone, I have matters to discuss, so I won't keep you. Hearing this, everyone present understood these were internal matters and didn't linger, they all stood up to say goodbye. Amidst the wave of people leaving, N.A.N had no choice but to hold back her words. Gritting her teeth, she couldn't be ungrateful and followed everyone out of the room. Before Dai Mubai left, he saw Zhu Zuqing standing silently and motionless in a corner. A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes. No wonder she could remain so calm even at this point. So she had joined a titled Duluo's family. But unfortunately, if it were an assault-type titled Duluo, she might be protected. But a support-type titled Duluo, in the martial arts advocate Star Luo Empire, might still fall short. Rules were rules. Mourning silently in his heart for a second, he withdrew his thoughts. The two had already confirmed each other's intentions with a glance earlier, their mutual understanding was clear. Each would mind their own business. Even if he failed, as a prince, the emperor's son, at worst his cultivation would be scrap, and he would live out his years in peace. As for the other, she could only pray for her own good fortune. Dai Mubai thought this as he, along with the others, stepped out of the room. Now only Tang San, Xiao Wu, Yin, and Zhu Zuqing remained in the room. Tang San's gaze briefly lingered on Zhu Zuqing. This person held a higher position than he imagined, to be able to stay in such a situation. But the next moment, the woman who had always appeared aloof and silent in his eyes now kneeling on the ground with fervent eyes, addressing Yin respectfully. I pay my respects to the moon god. Tang San was slightly stunned. Turning his gaze to Sister Yin, he saw that she accepted this address. So it really was a divine position. If it were Sister Yin, perhaps it was truly possible. An innate full spirit power blue-silver emperor spirit. This was extremely rare in the entire history of humanity on the continent, let alone being the sole emperor. But, was a divine position this powerful? A look of yearning flashed in Tang San's eyes. The last meeting was 3 years ago. Back then, Sister Yin was only a spirit saint. Now she had already reached the level of a titled Duluo. The effect of the divine position was displayed to the fullest, even faster than his own cultivation at the initial ranks. And there was the special ability to evolve spirits. No wonder Brother Mobai's family had been pursuing it all along. If he had known about this effect back then in Nuoding City, perhaps he should have been more piety. After all, Brother Mobai had said anyone had a chance, which definitely included himself. Now. Tang San let out a mental sigh, put on a smile, and said to Yin before him, congratulations, Sister Yin. Yin accepted it gladly, then turned to Zhu Zuqing, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, it's enough to hold things in your heart. In reality, just call me Sister Yin, like Xiao Wu and the others. Yes, Zhu Zuqing replied, her tone still carrying respect. Seeing this, Yin helplessly withdrew her gaze. As a believer in the true God, she could naturally sense the faith of the believer. The faith of the person before her was not weaker than anyone's. Little San, the young lord is currently occupied and can't get away. Knowing you had come, you specifically asked me to come and see you, to see if there was anything we could help with. But it seems now, with your current strength, we don't need to worry much at all. Hearing this, Tang San smiled bashfully, but his smile held more move. It wasn't just him who missed Brother Mobai remained as he always was. And being unable to get away, he could basically confirm it was about pursuing that almost impossibly rare third awakening. Really, won't there be any danger? Tang San couldn't help but ask. Of course there's danger, and it's quite high, Yin he smiled calmly and said. But with me here, everything is not a problem. As Yin spoke, the moon-shaped mark on her forehead was not deliberately concealed. As arranged by the young lord, it was displayed openly before Tang San's eyes without any concealment, shining brilliantly, carrying an aura of purity and brightness. Tang San couldn't help but be captivated by that radiance. Moon god, spirit evolution, wasn't awakening a form of evolution? If so, Brother Mobai and his family, from initially seeking the divine position, to assisting spirit awakening after obtaining it, it was all interconnected. Was everything within Brother Mobai's plans from the start? Thinking about it, back then the moon god's legacy was related to Brother Mobai's spirit awakening. Yet Brother Mobai had tell yourself about this, entrusting the future to an outsider he didn't even know at the time. Such camaraderie, such trust. Tang San's heart beat a little faster. Little San, you don't need to worry either. With my assistance, the young lord will definitely succeed. Succeed, Tang San murmured, his feelings particularly complex. But on the surface, he still managed a smile and replied. It will definitely happen. Chapter 72, Shrek 7 Devils. The young lord has always believed in you, which is why he told you about the divine position, something even a great sect like the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School is rarely aware of. Yin smiled slightly, but I am still just a successor right now, not a true deity. There are still many variables involved, so remember to keep it a secret, Little San. Even the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School didn't know. The importance of the divine position flashed through Tang San's mind once again, but what he felt even more was gratitude towards Brother Mobai. Only Brother Mobai would be selfless enough to share such a thing with a stranger. And likewise, only me. I know, Sister Yin. Tang San replied firmly. Yin then turned her gaze to Xiao Wu and Zhu Zuqing, briefly instructed them on a few things, and finally urged them to have fun before rising to her feet. It's getting late, and I should be going. Take good care of yourselves during this time, and be careful not to get hurt. Yin said gently, waved her hand, and pushed the door open to leave under the watchful eyes of the three. Since Mobai said so, then let's have fun. After Yin left, Xiao Wu breathed a small sigh of relief in her heart. She stood up energetically and punched the air, thinking that Yin's words to some extent represented Mobai's intention, telling her to have fun. This was her vacation, for sure. Tang San looked up at Xiao Wu with a look of helplessness on his face. A level 33 spirit elder at 12 years old, 3 levels stronger than him. So, was this all just playing? He had been cultivating diligently for 3 years. If that was the case, then someone like Brother Mobai who focused on cultivation must be even stronger, right? A spirit ancestor or a spirit king. Thinking this, Tang San turned his head to look out the window. It was getting late, and the setting sun cast its golden radiance across the land. The distant sun, like a pupil, flashed across his mind. If he really succeeded, would he still have a chance to catch up? Yin, who had just left, was not surprised to see the young girl waiting for her at the entrance of Shrek Academy. Her water blue dress shone brilliantly in the sunset, making the determination on the girl's face even more prominent. Miss Yin, Ning Rongrong still wanted to speak, but was stopped by Yin waving her hand again. Speculation is just speculation. I only listen to the young lord. If Miss Ning has any business, it would be more appropriate to speak with my young lord directly. Yin finished softly, nodded with a smile, and walked past Ning Rongrong. Ning Rongrong opened her mouth and then closed it. Watching Yin's departing figure, her willow eyebrows furrowed slightly. She thought about it, with such a firm stance, trying to win her over was becoming increasingly unrealistic. But this concerned the key to the defect in the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile Pagoda spirit, so she would not give up. Young Master Mo, I'll remember that. In Mobai's courtyard, Mobai listened to Yin's report and nodded slightly. Everything was going according to plan, slowly supplementing Tang San's knowledge. However, this initial batch of information was sufficient, any more would lead to poor results due to the clutter and complexity. The seedling had already been planted in Tang San's heart, as for its development, he just needed to wait for it to mature. And the most critical step in all this was Yin's cultivation breakthrough as the moon goddess, the awakening of his own spirit, the manifestation of his family, and the improvement of his strength. These were also the events that could most truly be displayed before Tang San's eyes, the most convincing ones. Yin, do not let me down. Yin, who was in front of him, bowed slightly, yes, young lord. Go back, Ying will accompany you. Mobai added. A shadow fluctuated beside him, and Ying with her cold and graceful figure, nodded slightly, her expression icy. Under the blessing of the meditation technique and the power of faith, the probability of Yin condensing a 100,000-year spirit ring in a spirit core was over 50%. But this was not the limit. As the empress of the Blue-Silver Grass clan, Yin had her own location, the forest filled with blue-silver grass, the place where Tang San condensed his 10,000-year spirit ring in the original work. If she were there, she could increase the success rate by at least another 10%. Relatively speaking, it would take some time, but Tang San also needed time to digest the knowledge he had absorbed during this period. With the passage of time, everything would become more reasonable. Mobai slightly curled the corner of his mouth and turned his attention to the spirit core condensation method in front of him. Since Huo Yuhao, the protagonist of the second part of Duluo continent, could condense a spirit core before becoming a titled Duluo, there was naturally no reason why he couldn't. As for Ning Rongrong, she was just a little lamb watching the bait and gradually falling into the trap. She was not worth wasting much thought on. The next day, the news that Tang San had brought 3 students to join Shrek Academy spread like wildfire and reached the ears of Yu Xiaogang and Flender. Both of them were full of surprise and looked at each other. The only worry from their conversation yesterday had surprisingly and unexpectedly vanished. 7 people was just right, enough. Xiaogang, how to twist them into a single rope, that depends on you. Flender said with a smile, patting Yu Xiaogang's shoulder with a sense of heavy responsibility. A flash of confidence crossed Yu Xiaogang's eyes. He didn't answer directly, but just nodded and looked at the 3 profiles in front of him, Xiao Wu, Zhu Zuqing, and Ning Rongrong of the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda. A perfect combination. It was as if it had been tailor-made for him by the heavens. Would the heavens pity a poor soul like him? After half a lifetime of frustration and unfulfilled ambition, he finally had the chance to prove his reputation. Just wait, he would prove it to everyone. He was not trash. Xiao Wu, whom he had originally given up on, had unexpectedly appeared before him, and Mobai, who he had always been worried about, was also reduced. This was even better. By the way, Xiaogang, Little San is level 30. Should we organize an adventure to the Stardow Great Forest to hunt for a spirit ring? That should promote quite a bit of team cohesion. A spirit ring. Yu Xiaogang's expression stiffened imperceptibly. The conflict that had arisen over spirit rings back then was still fresh in his memory. Since then, regarding the age of spirit rings, he only provided general knowledge, and even his arrangements were merely recommendations, with the final age decided by Little San. Otherwise, with Little San's talent, he would have been able to hunt for a spirit ring long ago. But because of that, proof, from Mobai and Xiao Wu 3 years ago, that physical constitution could increase the limit of the age of a spirit ring that could be absorbed. Nowadays, he also knew Little San's intentions, he still wanted to further polish his physical constitution before absorbing a spirit ring. But no one else knew the reason for this. Should he say it out loud? Of course not. At least until he had established an absolute image, he could not let outsiders see his mistake in teaching Little San, and that was all. It's not time yet, Yu Xiaogang said calmly, then explained, an adventure without coordination won't bring much benefit, and going one by one is too troublesome. If I'm not mistaken, Oscar is also level 29, right? It won't be long, let's talk about it then. Without coordination, that's true. Flender nodded, turning his gaze to his unflappable old friend, then what is the first step of the training plan? I have my own methods. A look of certainty appeared on Yu Xiaogang's face. Sharing joys and sorrows, he couldn't do the sharing joys part right now, but sharing sorrows was easy. He had seen the 12 or 13-year-old children had very strong psychological plasticity. There were no truly bad children among the 7. As long as they were guided a little, they would develop in the direction he expected. Chapter 73, A Spar After 3 Years. Shrek open ground. Fighting. Great, great, just the thing to stretch my muscles. Xiao Wu stood in the queue of 7, listening to the sparring training method announced by Yu Xiaogang. Her eyes lit up, she had been worrying about not having a reason to secure the title of Big Sister. Among these 7, the most threatening were Dai Mubai and Little San. Or rather, only Little San, Dai Mubai was of no concern at all. Offensive moves would only fall at a disadvantage against her soft techniques. She used softness to overcome hardness, but it was difficult to use hardness to overcome softness, she didn't have that disposition. The only one worth noting was Little San. Right, Mobai seemed to tell me to remember to observe Little San's various spirit abilities. Now is a chance. Without waiting for Yu Xiaogang to announce the sparring pairings, Xiao Wu stepped out, looking at Tang San with bright eyes. Come on, Little San, let me see if you've made any progress in these 3 years. Tang San smiled. Ever since his teacher mentioned sparring, he had anticipated this outcome. Refuse, of course not. He also wanted to figure out to what extent the little partner from the same academy back then had grown, and whether he had caught up. He also stepped out, exchanged a look with Xiao Wu, and said, come on. Seeing the two quickly agree to a fight, the others also quickly pulled back with looks of spectators. Among these people, only Yu Xiaogang flashed an unnatural expression, but he quickly hid it. Although this battle was in his plans, an unannounced plan was not his plan. And it lacked any sense of dignified image. He had clearly pulled Flender to stand by his side, but Flender didn't seem to have any intention of intervening. He inexplicably had the feeling that Xiao Wu had more authority. No, it must be an illusion. Flender should also be curious about a duel between these two people who, one after the other, broke the record for the fastest spirit elder on the continent. After comforting himself internally, Yu Xiaogang raised his eyes and focused his gaze on the upcoming competition. Xiao Wu looked at Tang San's serious face opposite her, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and her soft bones rabbit spirit naturally possessed her. The blue-silver grass around Tang San radiated exuberant vitality, fine filaments adorned with flowers, vigilantly watching the opponent. But suddenly, Xiao Wu looked in one direction and exclaimed happily, Mobai. You're here. Brother Mobai. Hearing this familiar and expectant name, Tang San subconsciously glanced in that direction, but only saw an empty clearing. Hee, as expected, this trick definitely works. Xiao Wu's playful voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Tang San's pupils constricted. How could she be this fast? Although he had long been on guard against this kind of deceptive move, just now he was clearly several meters away from Xiao Wu, and his purple demon eye hadn't noticed any movement from her at all. It was as if the opponent had suddenly appeared by his side. This distance, it's coming. Tang San secretly thought to himself, and Xiao Wu's first spirit skill instantly appeared in his mind. At the very moment of his imagination, a pair of feet had already rested on his neck. Suddenly, Xiao Wu's figure arched in a soft curve. Tang San was alarmed, and just as he wanted to block, those calves had already clamped onto his neck, and Xiao Wu's delicate voice came to his ear, Little San, you lose. First spirit skill, waist bow. With a strong pulling sensation, his body was lifted off the ground by an indescribable huge force. But, it really is close quarters combat. A trace of a smile flashed across Tang San's face. From the very beginning, he had already placed blue-silver grass seeds on his body, precisely to restrain close combat attacks like Xiao Wu's. He whispered, second spirit skill, parasite. In the next second, countless blue-silver grass sprouted from his body and quickly wound toward the legs on his neck. If the binding was successful, Xiao Wu would be like a rabbit that had fallen into a trap, tightly bound and unable to break free. Because Xiao Wu's movements would be restricted, the force would certainly not be great, and he would at most suffer some injuries, but the final victory would be his. Xiao Wu saw the purple black blue silver grass rapidly winding up. It wasn't as pretty as Sister Yin's. But if once doesn't work, just try a few more times, right? There was no need for a life and death struggle. Xiao Wu frowned, temporarily interrupting her first spirit skill, waist bow, and directly threw Tang San's body away instead of slamming it into the ground. Tang San flew in midair, his gaze landing on Xiao Wu's figure, who remained in place as expected. Flying away was also another outcome, and being in the air was even a kind of strategy. Tang San raised his hand, and a large amount of blue-silver grass quickly emerged from the position where he had just stood. First,